By way of introduction, I'm the CEO of Management Development Institute, Pakistan. My own background is in IT and telecom. I've spent most of my career working in the Far East in various computer and telecom firms. And since 2000, I've been an entrepreneur running my own institute, which is called MDI, which is an Education and Training Institute. My co-moderator today is Uzera Nishat, who is an HR and management expert, a trainer and a consultant. She's also the CEO of the Institute of Empowerment, which has conducted various training courses and webinars. And Uzera is a very experienced management consultant. She will be my co-moderator in this webinar. Today's webinar's focus is really not going to be a formal presentation, but more of a conversation about entrepreneurship in terms of what entrepreneurship is, what it isn't. And the whole idea of the webinar is to tap into the real life knowledge and experience of a seasoned entrepreneur. And for this, we have the pleasure of having with us today Salman Farooq. Salman is a very successful entrepreneur who has run and is still running multiple businesses in Pakistan and internationally. Originally schooled and trained in the US, Salman has had extensive experience running companies related to technology, education, energy, construction, and more recently in retail and e-commerce. And he has started businesses in different countries in the US, where he began his career as an entrepreneur, and subsequently in countries like Sri Lanka and Pakistan. As he has briefly mentioned, he regularly teaches at various universities where he shares his experience. So today, the idea is that both Uzera and I are going to ask him some questions about his perspective and his wisdom about starting and running a sustainable business. Before we launch into the questions and the interview with Salman, the conversation with him, some very quick admin information. This webinar is going to be about 1.5 hours long, with some time at the end, maybe 25 to 30 minutes to address the questions that come from the participants of the webinar. And since there are a lot of participants, what we would like to suggest is that you enter any questions that come to mind in the chat area. And then Uzera and I will then try to ensure we address as many of these questions as possible in the last 25 to 30 minutes. We have made sure that there is a recording of this webinar, which will be available on YouTube subsequently. And we'll send you the link, inshallah, tomorrow, perhaps later this evening. And we're also transmitting live on MDI Entrepreneurship Facebook page, which is facebook.com/mdi.entrepreneurship. So with that, I'd like to welcome Salman. Salman, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much, Asad.
Okay, do you want to just say a few words about a very brief introduction to your journey as an entrepreneur before we begin the series of questions?
Sure. Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Asad and Uzera and all the other participants, it's a pleasure and actually it's an honor to be here. It's a privilege. And before I do that, I have to acknowledge a very dear friend. She just came on board. Her name is Dr. Shelva Wheel. She's a professor in Jerusalem University. And she's a well-known scholar. She has written many books and she's well-traveled and well-respected speaker in not only just Middle East, in Europe and America and all over the world. She's been to India. So that means she must come to Pakistan. So welcome, Dr. Shelva. And we honored that you were able to join us, even though you'll be here only for half an hour. She said she had a radio appointment that she'll be attending. So after that, just quick background. I won't go into very detail because at my age, when you start the introduction, it gets too long. As I said, mentioned that I spent most of my adult life in US, graduated from there, and had a computer business for almost 20 years. And so all my business and ethics that I learned they were learned in US, excuse me. Excuse me. And then I came back to Pakistan to serve my country and raise my children. And we had 2 IT institutes in Pakistan and 1 in Sri Lanka. And just talking about quick path of my business, they call me serial entrepreneurs. But if they call, also they can call me, most of the time I do fail. So there's some time I am successful too. So God makes up all the losses. I'm very proud of one of the business that I was a founder of Islamic Bank. And even right now, we are into a few other businesses, including construction, e-commerce, solar, ocean farming. As mentioned, the brother Rizvi is also on board over here. He's the chairman of this company. And also we have a couple of more businesses. So after that, go ahead, Asad, let's start the real thing.
All right, thank you, Salman. And Dr. Shalva Whale, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you before. I just saw your photograph on the screen, and I'd like to welcome you to the webinar. It's an honor to have you here. From what Salman has said about you, it's a privilege to have you on the webinar. Thank you for being here.
I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me. I only apologize that I have to go at noon our time. I have to be interviewed on the radio. But it is a real pleasure to be with you. And I hope, as you say, inshallah, that we will have many more meetings in the future and that our 2 countries will become closer and closer.
All right, thank you very much. It's an honor. And Dr. Amjad Parvez, I see you on the screen as well. Thank you for being here. Let me just find a way to unmute you, sir. I'm going to ask to unmute you so you can also chip in whenever you like. Thank you for being here.
I said before you go on quickly, Dr. Shalva, I met my family and I met her in Jerusalem. And actually it was almost a year ago, we had honor to attend a dinner at our private, at our house in a private family ceremony. So we were very honored for that. And thank you very much. And hopefully love to come back again. Thank you.
Dr. Amjad Parvez, you want to say a couple of words, sir? A few words?
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you to Salman Bhai for inviting me. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself. I left Pakistan at the age of 10. I've lived in UK for the last 5 decades. I'm a serial entrepreneur. We have a company here called Adams and Seafresh Group, which is probably one of the largest food service companies. I'm also involved in technology. You must know Jumpstart Pakistan, Lift Pakistan. I'm currently the chairman of that organization. But for the last kind of 15, 20 years, I've been a policymaker, particularly involved in education enterprise here in UK with the government, looking at how industry can connect with the learning quarter. So we think here in UK that the future wealth creators are going to be the universities, because you have an agglomeration of all the faculties, and that's where your developed human capital is. And that really is just a brief introduction. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for that. And Mohsen Saab, I'd just like to ask you to chip in a little bit. Mohsen Lodhi is somebody we have known for a long time. He's an entrepreneur himself, a successful one, and also a very competent entrepreneurship and business trainer and coach. Would you like to say a few words before we start our questions to Salman?
Thank you, Asad, and thank you, Salman Bhai, for inviting me. I'm Mohsin Lodhi. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have set up 4 companies and have run them very successfully in Pakistan. And then I've been teaching at NUS. I taught 4 subjects there. I taught entrepreneurship, and then I ran 2 diploma courses on entrepreneurship in collaboration with MDI. That was World Bank funded projects. So nowadays I'm fully dedicated towards leadership, entrepreneurship, personal development. And in corporates, I've trained more than 19,000 executives over the last nine years. That's my background.
Wonderful, thank you. So please do chip in with your ideas and thoughts and wisdom as we start our interview now with Salman. And Salman, what we are going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions first and let you share your insights about these questions. And then what we'll do is I'll ask Uzera to also chip in and ask some questions after I do my first couple of questions. So let's start. The first question I have is basically, a lot of people talk about this term called entrepreneurship. And for many people, it might be clear what entrepreneurship is, but for quite a number of people, the word entrepreneurship evokes all kinds of myths and misconceptions. So may I ask you, Salman, what actually is entrepreneurship? And more importantly, what it isn't, if you could enlighten us.
So thank you very much. I think that's a fundamental questions and that deserve to be answered before anybody get into it. First of all, I always like to put it in that it is a sunnah of Prophet ﷺ, and according to him, that it is 9 out of 10 of risk of the money that you earned or the that you bringing home. 9 is tijarat out of 10. So that's what to begin with is this is always we are following our sunnah, and then to me it is creating jobs. Not only creating jobs, you are actually spreading the wealth instead of just working for one person or one company and for yourself. In reality, now that's what we need, and any society that what the best you can do is that create jobs. So the more people can be employed, especially nowadays in Corona. If you can come up with any business and create one job, that means you're really supporting one family. And since I've been in business practically most of my life, I only worked 2 years selling Apple computers in US when I graduated. And after that, I started my business. So I can say personally that it's nothing but it's a freedom to do what you always wanted to do. And then not only that, you do make a difference. When you are a businessman, you make a difference in the society, and not only your family, in the society. It is also, if you have to put it another way, it's pursuing an opportunity that you identify first. Obviously, you have to identify a opportunity, and then you profit from it. That's what the bottom line is. And there are many different ways of saying things about entrepreneurship. But one I like the best is about Richard Branson. We all know Virgin chairman of Virgin Group. It is about turning what excites you in life into capital, so that you can do more of it and move forward with it. So in a nutshell, that's what entrepreneurship is. You can spend a lot of time on it, but in a nutshell.
So in your case, I mean, just expanding on that a little bit, in your case, is it something that you deliberately thought about that I'm going to become an entrepreneur? Is that how it started? Or you stumbled upon an opportunity by chance that made you think, get into this whole business of running your own business? How exactly did this entrepreneurship thing happen to you?
Again, I said that's a good question, and very few people have ever asked me that question. So thank you for asking that question. I've been in sales even when I was in Government College Lahore, and when I was in NCA, when I was doing architecture in Lahore. I just always wanted more. I don't know why. Maybe one of the reasons was that we were lower middle class family, especially when we were raised. We were very, very poor. So there's always lack of money, I guess, and I wanted more. So I started selling in life insurance, and I did extremely well. I guess because I was hungry, I wanted more money. So when I went to US, again, I started selling. Even while I was in the university, I used to have 2-3 jobs during my semester, and 2-3 jobs in a week, actually. I used to work probably 40 to 60 hours a week while I was going full time. I finished school 3 years. 4-year degree I finished in 3 years. So then when I started selling Apple computer, I became very successful. My first second year, I was one of the top 5 most successful salespeople in the country for Apple. And even the city I was working for was only had, I think, 70,000 people. And we were competing with Atlanta and Houston. So when I did that, I became so successful. And that's when I realized that, hey, instead of working for somebody else, and I knew they were making good money that I was selling, and I was getting good money too, but not as much as I knew they were making. So that's when I decided that I want to have my own business. So that's how the journey started. I never planned for it. It was not in my bucket list when I was growing up. Actually, I didn't even know there was a bucket list. So, and neither in my family, mother's side or father's side, either one ever had was in business. So it's just coincidence that I got into it. It was an accident, quite frankly.
And would anybody else like to, from our guests, like to contribute on how, Dr. Amjad, how did you get into business? Was it accidental or deliberate, planned?
I think, thank you very much. Salman, it's interesting, your definition of entrepreneur, and you quote from Richard Branson. But obviously, I mean, you lived in America, you came back to Pakistan, and obviously your reason for that was that you wanted to bring about change. For me, fundamentally, entrepreneurship is about what are the problems in society that the customer faces. And by God, in Pakistan, we've got, huge problems, whether it's climate change, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's transport, whether it's health, whether it's education. So as an overseas Pakistani, as a Pakistani, my heart obviously throbs for the nation. Anybody who's a national of any country, that happens. But I think there are 2 things for me which resonate with Salman and a lot of the overseas Pakistanis. Is number one, that we're absolutely passionate about our country. But the second bit is very important. We want to transform Pakistan. And that's been the aspiration of the first generation of migrants that left Pakistan, my father's generation after the partition. And then obviously my generation that's grown up in UK, and then my children. And fundamentally, the way that we transform societies and nations to creating abundance, employment, and creating wealth is really through entrepreneurialism. Because an entrepreneur basically is somebody who relishes taking risks. A lot of the courses that I come across, a lot of the speakers that I come across, Baijan, they try to de-risk everything, like almost 100%. But, the fix for an entrepreneur is not to de-risk, is to actually take that plunge and creatively and innovatively, right, sort that problem out that the customer or society benefits from it, and you have a sustainable business. So I think, I'm not saying Salman was wrong. I'm just adding to yes, the kind of mixture.
And in some ways, you have answered partly my next part of the question, which is a lot of people who are not entrepreneurs yet and who aspire to be entrepreneurs. And after all, this webinar is in large part to convert some people to this whole idea of entrepreneurship. Is that people grapple with this idea, I'm earning a salary or I want a steady job. But actually, this risk of not having a steady paycheck at the end of every month. Salman, how did you handle this? The risk part which Dr. Parvez has just mentioned. How did you get over that hump? because for a lot of people, they think about this all the time. I know in my career, I used to think about leaving my job and starting something I really wanted to do better than everybody else. But the idea of that risk, the challenge of that risk always made me go back until I finally took the plunge. But in your case, what happened?
That's a very good question, because that's a dilemma most of the people face who get so comfortable in a cushy job and they get a paycheck every month. They know they're pretty much guaranteed, even though nowadays nothing is guaranteed in the world anymore because of all the circumstances that keep changing, and then our lives are getting ups and down. For me, it was quite easy in the sense that I was fortunate enough that my family was at that time, when I started business, was middle income, and so I didn't have to send the money to them. So I was all alone. I had no relative, no responsibility. So 2 years when I worked for selling computers, I saved every penny of it, correct? Quite frankly, every penny I saved. I mean, except the basic necessities. I was living in a you call it a mobile home, for a couple of years over there. So for me, it was just risk was me, and I knew that I can always go back and sell. Matter of fact, when I got married to a beautiful lady, Nabila, and here is Sushil. By the way, Dr. Perm's wife, Sushil, Bhabhi is also on board. So welcome, Bhabhi, and Dr. She was seeing my wife also. So when I married her, at that time I was practically, she didn't know that until she got married. I was practically going to bankruptcy, which I did. So I told her, look, you don't know me. Your brother came, he only saw my fancy car, mobile phone at that time. But in reality, I'm about to go bankrupt. So I want you to know that, even though it's kind of late, we are married, but one promise I'll make you, that I honored that, by the way, is that if we ever get hungry and there's only meal for one person, that you be the one eating it. And that's exactly what happened. So for me, that was the only risk. But on the other hand, to me, answering your questions, people that to get stuck in that question and they keep thinking on it, and they actually end up spending their life living paycheck to paycheck and never get out of that vicious cycle. Rewards are greater, obviously, when you have your own business, because you get rewarded for the effort you put it in, versus in a working for a job for somebody else. Most of the time, you don't get rewarded for your efforts. After end of the year, you might get a raise and you get some bonus if you're lucky. Otherwise, you don't. And then the creativity stops right there when you know you are not getting rewarded for your efforts. And to me, is the best part of that is that I'm the boss. And for that reason, I'm sorry, Asad, you want to say something? Can I go on? Okay. For that reason, I'm so lucky that I travel 8 to 10 times a year, except this year, I only traveled twice. Normally, I travel 8 to 10 times a year, and I'm lucky enough to travel more than 60 countries of the world. And I still have quite a few businesses that I'm not running day to day, but because I'm the boss, I can take off anytime I want. This year, we couldn't go anywhere out of the country, so I went 4 times to the northern areas. So at the same time, of having your own boss, you also have flexible hours. And one of the best part is that it's a continuous learning. When you're your own boss, when you have your own business, I said, you have to continue learning. Not just learning, the fact that your trade also you keep learning.
Right.
So
okay.
There are many benefits for that, in my opinion. Thank you.
So thank you for that, Salman. I'm going to ask Uzera now to hand over to Uzera to ask some of her questions. And Uzera, once you've asked the question, perhaps you could draw Dr. Shalva and Mohsin Saab's inputs also during the conversation. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Asad. And wonderful to have valuable insights from Salman and some of our guests too. I think a good discussion going on risks and all. So Salman, I want to ask you that since we are human beings and for beginners to jump into this kind of a thing, which is entrepreneurship scene. So one of the fears I have come across people talking about, that probably they stuck into that kind of a mindset, that probably they need to have some specific background or a family connection with businesses. So who, in your opinion, although we have heard stories from you and from Dr. Amjad too, but then who can become an entrepreneur in your opinion? Do they really need to have a specific background or a family business background to even think of having their own businesses?
Uzera, thank you very much for asking that question, because I do get that questions quite often when I teach at the universities, and sometimes they wonder, especially our culture is such that our even my parents, my father also, and most of people's parents, they tell them to get a state job, get a government job, go get into army. You have a secure future. So we don't have the culture of entrepreneurship over here. So that's another excuse people give is, well, none of my family members in business, so should I really do that? Yes, actually, anyone can be entrepreneur, and I'm a prime example of that. As I mentioned before, that my mother's side, father's side, nobody is in business. And we have, just in my family, we have 5 brothers, and the 4 brothers beside me. They all are very professional. 2 of them have a PhD and 2 are engineers, but none of them have got into business. So that means you can be in business. But of course, Uzera, it does help. Family background does help tremendously. Like my children now, they cannot imagine working for somebody, even though elder one is working for a short time, but he pretty much has his own boss. He's getting a project where he's the boss, and he keeps thinking that within a year, which he has a deadline that he's going to get out. And younger one already started a business. And another prime example we have is Mehman and Boraz and Sheikh, and there are many other family names we know of that they are into business. Mehman's I know very well, because one of my best friend, actually the best friend, is Rafiq Qasim, that Asad, you know him too, and Rizvi know. They are Mehman, and when I sit down on the dinner table, it's amazing to see that how with the children also are we sitting on the table. Literally, Uzera, they switch business topic every 2 minutes. They go from one business to another. And I've seen them, as you know, seen them in the shops. The children come from the school, they go straight to the shop. And they sit with the father, do their homework, have lunch, and then they're till 8 o'clock until the shop closes. They're helping their father. So yes, it does help. Also, it would help is if you have a outgoing and social personality, that obviously help. That's one of the reasons that I was in sales. And I always call myself a salesperson, because that's what you're doing, selling, when you're in business. So I hope I answer your question.
Right. Thank you, Salman. Thank you. And I think Dr. Shalva may be leaving very soon. So may I request her to share her views on this particular question?
Her mic is mute. Is admin has to.
I'll just ask her to unmute again.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I have exactly 1 minute. I have no experience of entrepreneurship on a personal level. However, Salman doesn't know, but in fact, you are the first people in the world to know, except for the people who invited me. I will be, as of March, going to Cambridge University in the UK to write an academic book, which has already been commissioned, at the Centre for Financial History in the Faculty of History at Cambridge, on the entrepreneurial activities of the Sassoon dynasty in India, which also reached Pakistan, by the way. They used to trade through Pakistan. So the Sassoons were an Iraqi family who came primarily from Baghdad and Basra to India larger India, including Pakistan in those days, from about 1846 onwards, and basically stayed in Asia and for about 100 years. I'm making this very simple. But they became absolutely enormous entrepreneurs, trading from Aden on the one side to Shanghai on the other side, through what today is Bangladesh. And they had family members placed in all these cities, Hong Kong, up to Shanghai, trading in all sorts of things, including opium, which was then legal, and made a fortune and also lost a fortune. So they also became part of the British aristocracy, and I hope to work in the Sassoon archives at Cambridge and write this financial history. The entrepreneurship as a subject does suddenly interest me from an academic point of view. And so even if I have no personal experience, I'm fascinated by the kind of personalities, the character, the family background of the people who move into entrepreneurship. And it should be pointed out that Sassoons couldn't have done it if they were a single individual. And this is very interesting. They had lots and lots of children, and they placed them in different places in the world. In other words, they were one of the first multinational corporations. And I think that one can learn from Salman's own story, which he's just told now, his narrative, that one can be an entrepreneur as an individual, as in, let's say, America, but to be a really successful entrepreneur, one needs to have a huge family network, or a network that one can trust. So thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for letting me speak for a minute. And perhaps I'll see you in the future. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Azad.
We'll see you in Jerusalem again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us the insights. And coming back to Salman, my next question has actually two, and they're somehow interrelated. So I thought to throw them to you at once. That for the beginners in the field of entrepreneurship, of course, that should they start part-time or jump in by burning all the bridges? Number one. And that means that somehow related question that don't you need a lot of money to start a business?
Uzera, thank you very much. Let me answer the first question, which is a very relevant question, and anybody wants to get into it, that is a prime question that they usually wonder about it, because you got a cushy job or a steady job, and you have a paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, so that it's really difficult to burn the bridges. So it depends on situation. If you're starting first time, and also if you're starting a small business with your own idea or passion, then it might be a good idea to start a part-time to test the waters. On contrary to that, I did jump into the business myself. Matter of fact, I quit the job, and then I didn't know that it would take me 6 months to start the business, because I wanted to start get a franchise from a national company. And at that time, IBM, Apple were the two big force in computers. So I wanted to get a franchise for both of them. So for that, I have to wait for 6 months. So in 6 months, I kept burning my money, but I was so determined not to start another job, because I was afraid if I get sucked into the job, I might never come out of it, never started. So I kept trying and reading, and then I did that. So because I had burned my bridges, that really enticed me, and that motivated me to keep going despite the fact hardships. But at the same time, it does has a drawbacks, because you have another full-time job or part-time job, you might not be able to concentrate in your new efforts. It is easy to lose focus, and also you might get disappointed quickly. because you can always fall back to your job. And at the same time, there are certain businesses that just cannot start as a part-time. And all I can think of right now is like a retail store. It's a retail store is very intensive work that you have to be there all the time in that sense. So there are certain businesses you cannot. But if you're just consulting something with your profession, you might be able to do it. On the other hand, if it's full time, then you have no choice but to succeed, because you have burned your bridges. You have no job, and it doesn't come. Jobs, especially good jobs, don't come too often. And in nowadays environment, if it's a tight environment, economy is not doing well, especially coronavirus. So you end up focusing more and spending and being more dedicated and spending more time. And answering your question, the second question, that does it require a lot of money? Again, it depends. For example, if you're just starting as a consulting, part of your profession, that now you're going to start making money, and then you might not need it. It's your expertise that really, and the time that you'll be charging. So you might not need a lot of money. At the same time, nowadays, as you know, e-commerce is so popular all over the world and very successful. We have seen it. I mean, Amazon has tripled their value, and so does most of the companies. So online business nowadays, it doesn't require a lot of capital. And again, in certain situations, one of our small online, that's my passion actually, that I spend a lot of time on. It's a startup, very small business. It's called Gosha Anan Green Farms. It's an online platform to sell dry fruits and very specialized items, like honey and dates and stuff like that. We did not need a lot of capital nowadays. You can start a online company just by having a website, which is only 10,000. A lot of ladies nowadays, they are on Instagram and Facebook, and that doesn't require any money. But at the same time, Uzera, as you build your credibility and as your experience increases, then investors offer you the money. We are very fortunate right now that we want to start a business, which we are right now in the process of doing it. 3-4 business, we are in the middle of it. We can raise money very quickly. People come and want to invest because you have built up the trust. And I always say, Uzera, trust is like a bank balance. So more you put it in, more your deposit increases, and later on you can cash. So I hope I answered your question, Uzera.
Beautiful thing. Thank you, Salman. And I would like to throw the same question to Mohsin, who has successfully executed 4 startups he mentioned. So, Mohsin, would you like to share your views on it?
Yeah, thank you, Zara. Having had the opportunity to work for ICI for 6 years in sales, I had developed the knack of selling. Basically, I was the first Asian to be awarded the Queen's Export Award back in 1981. So when I came back Pakistan, I was fully determined to start the job, even though I was offered a job of regional sales manager from ICI Pakistan. But let me share with you, it is basically the burning desire. You got to have the fire in your belly to do the business. If you keep on saying, "Yeah, I want to do it," you are only interested. You are not committed. You got to get committed by just having a burning desire plus taking action. That's it. And when I started, I just decided one night, and next day I opened up the company, and from there on, I have done consulting, I have done IT business, I have done healthcare business, which is still going on, and my fourth company is training and coaching. And Alhamdulillah, we in all of them, we set the landmarks, and we have been running the flags in the industry as well. Because when I was doing the IT business, HP, which is one of the major IT company, within 8 months in the history of HP, we became the corporate reseller. And we were the first one to bring in because in those times, they only used to know HP only makes the printers. But but we were the first one to bring their other products like PCs, laptops, etc., etc. So what I would say is, because you want to do the business, first of all, uh, get a job for at least 18 months or 24 months. Get to know the in and outs of what happens in the job, and do that job as if it's your own business, basically. This is what I teach to my students as well, because when I was teaching diploma at MDI, I taught 38 students, and out of this, 50% was the conversion rate. 19 embraced the entrepreneurship. Similar thing happened at NUST as well. Out of 126, 28 people, students, they embraced entrepreneurship, and they are very successful. Because what I used to tell them is, because you need to have a calculated risk, not only the blind risk, because it's a foolish to have a blind risk, basically. Otherwise, what will happen is, because we don't have that kind of a funds, we cannot lay back upon. So you do the job, and then the strategy should be that, you start, as very rightly Salman said, you start a side business. And when your income from the side business goes 1.5 times than your present salary, quit the job then. It's as simple as that. This is what I've learned. So these are the tips I would like to share with you, basically. And once you are determined, then never think about it, because in Pakistan, unfortunately, there are two stigmas. First of all, people, what would people say? Forget about it. What will people say? You just follow your own passion, basically. I was just reading the new definition Jeff Bezos has come up for success. He said it's not your passions. Passions choose you, basically. So look for your passions, what you are passionate about, and just blindly follow that one. And no one can stop you then, because we just copycat who is doing what, and then we try to say, okay, I'll do the same. So that's the wrong approach. You are unique. Everybody is unique. Go on your strengths, basically. This is what I always tell people. Go on your strengths. Everybody has got unique strengths. Uh, Asad has different strengths. Salman has different strengths. You has different strengths. So everybody has its own strengths. Find out what are your strengths, and then leverage upon those strengths, basically. That's the simple formula, basically. No rocket science. It's as simple as that. That's what I would like to add, basically.
Thank you, Mohsin. I think wonderful thoughts on desire and burning desire, rather, and a passion. But then with your insights, I think burning desire and passion, if it is coupled with a proper coaching, then it takes you to the right direction. And with this, I would like to ask Asad to ask some more questions.
All right, thank you, Uzera, for that. Salman, a couple of more questions, and I've also got some questions on our chat, which I will convey to you. But first, is there a perfect age to start a business? Because there are two sides to this. There is the idea that once you've worked for a number of years, like you and I did, we spent time working in companies. Mohsen worked in the UK. Uzera did a lot of work in management positions before she decided to launch on her own. Is that what you do? You spend time gaining experience, and then when you are in your late 30s, early 40s, perhaps even 50s or 60s, that's when you start a business? Or would you recommend leaning on the other side, the other end of the spectrum, where you start very early in life, perhaps immediately after university, maybe when you're in your 20s? What's your general take? Is there a rule for this, or any ages is all right?
I said that's again very good questions, because that's what confuses people too. Sometimes they wonder that am I ready for it if I'm only 25, or I'm already 35, and some they say at 40, oh well, it's too late. No, in reality, I said there is no age limit. That you can actually whenever you want to, either you find a passion or passion finds you, as Mohsen said, that you need to get into it. It is instinct that you should go by, and your instinct never, they're not wrong. They're usually not wrong. At the same time, we do have plenty of examples that later age or senior age you can start. And one of the prime example is, and I'll give some example of Pakistani younger entrepreneurs also. I said, everybody knows KFC, Colonel Sanders. He started at 62. And also, as we talked about dedication and commitment, I think he was rejected 3,000 times, something like that, for his SOP before somebody said yes. Even now, I am in my 60s. At present, we have 3 or 4 startups.
You don't look 60. You look like you're in your sort of mid 40s.
Oh, I forgot. I made a mistake.
You're supposed to return the compliment now.
Thank you very much. And so even now, I'm a sucker for opportunities, and so does business people. Actually, people who've been in business most of their life, they literally are sucker for opportunities. And good example is, in March, I was in Colombo with my friend Rafiq. That he and his family has close to 40 businesses actually.
Wow,
and
40.
Yeah, and maybe more. And every time I meet, I find out they're into that business too, in that family. But what I'm saying is that I had an online, my idea. I had a friend of mine, Zia from Karachi, that he has a blockchain and online training for blockchain and artificial intelligence. He's working with the president anyway. And then I spoke to my friend. He says, Salman, look, I'm 60. I think he's 67, 60. I say, I'm about to retire. I don't want to get into anything, And 2 days later, when we talked about more and more, he was into it. So, and then as far as younger people, Steve Jobs, and Bill Gates are the prime, and Mark Zuckerberg, they are the prime example. They were Steve Jobs and Bill Gates started in their teen, and Mark Zuckerberg was in his 20s. And in Pakistan, Mudassar was 33 when he started Kareem. And we all know Pak Wheel, Hanif Bhatti, who started, he was in his 30s also. So in that sense, we have another very big success story in Pakistan is Amin.com. And the 2 brothers, Zishan and Imran Ali Khan, they must have been in their 30s when they started it. So yes, I said there is no age limit. It's all when the calling comes. They call it calling. So whenever the calling comes, you need to be in it. Otherwise, it'll be too late.
And I noticed there are a lot of university graduates, so students from NAST, from Zabes, from many local universities. They are teaming up. So perhaps individually they're afraid to launch a business on their own. So 2 or 3 friends get together, very young friends, pool in some money and start some new idea, maybe a food business or something to do with transportation. So you're right, even very young people are now starting. Another question I had, Salman, was the kinds of questions that young aspiring entrepreneurs ask. In the courses we have run, Mohsen mentioned the diploma of entrepreneurship, other entrepreneurship courses we have run more recently. The typical question is, how do I decide what kind of business to get into? So of course, sometimes you know what business it's going to be because you have some kind of a passion or an opportunity presents itself. But sometimes people are trying to deliberate over what is possible, what kind of business. Should it be product? Should it be service related? What kind of industry? Should I go into health or construction or energy? How does one decide this? If there is a decision process.
I'm sorry. Yes, Asad, this is a very good question. Yes, because that's where, again, people get stuck in it. That is this what I'm about to start? Is this a good idea? Has opportunity in it? Can I make money in it? Actually, there is no set rule for that. First of all, is that you got to see if you find opportunities, you can fill the gap. Business people, entrepreneurs, actually what they do is they find a gap, and they need to fill the gap, And that's when the business come live. I'll give you
When
example.
you say a gap, you mean an unmet need or
Yes,
some
unmet.
problem in the community or whatever. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it could be anything. It could be service, it could be product, it could be. And I'll give you some example. For example, I remember, I think most of us also probably used to do, as some people still do, that in the winter, the gas geysers, you turn it off at night or lower it down so it doesn't burn all night long because our gas is so expensive. So you, in the morning before Fajr, you run outside because geysers are outside and you turn it on and it's a nightmare. And if you forget it, then you are doing wudu in a cold water. So somebody came up with a timer, and so there's a timer with the Bluetooth. You can set the time and it automatically is on and off, pilot, high, low, all of that. And actually they partner with the Sui Gas, they're making millions. I mean, it's an amazing opportunity. And then the fact is, every time I use it, I see it, I thank them for that device. Another one is my favorite, is that because I travel so much, and especially especially when you travel economy, which I usually do, and if it's a long haul, I mean, you talk about 16 hours to from Dubai to Houston, or 12 hours to South Africa. I went a few years back, so you have trouble resting your feet because they start hurting. And suddenly I saw online they were selling footrests, so that you put it on the top of the seat in front of you, and then it becomes like a little net underneath, and you put your feet or your legs on it, and amazing. And as we know, is food delivery, suddenly took off. And there could be some single items, as Asad, you have reminded me of Savor Biryani. I mean, that's all they do, sell biryani or paratha. That's all they do. So, and another one big one is that you can disturb the industry. The whole industry can be upside down if you come up with a new opportunity. And Uber and Cream is the prime example. I mean, just in Lahore, a few years back, I was told that Cream have 30,000 captains, 30,000. And I know probably more than that. And another one is Airbnb. I mean, look at that. Airbnb is about to go public. Their net worth will be more than top big companies, hotels chains together, including Marriott and including Hilton even. So that should just tell you how they can disturb it. And then it could be passion again, and that could be is a great opportunity. And for me, is a Park Wheel. The gentleman, he started this thing just because he loved cars. And 14 years ago, he started Park Wheel, and now became a multi-million-dollar company. It's our unicorn. And then more recently, I know is in Beverly Center, Islamabad, there is a Burning Browning. I know the owner, very young guy, he's maybe late 20s, early 30s. He just has a passion for that. And now it's a serious business.
In fact, it reminds me, one of my BBA graduates, a student called Talha, started a little eatery in Beverly Center just about 2-3 years ago, called Delhi Darwaza.
Yes.
And his mother makes fantastic nihari.
Yeah.
And everywhere he went, he could not find good nihari. So he went to open this little eatery shop called Delhi Darwaza, which started to do very well. Now they've moved to Allah Wali Market in F8.
Yes, that's
still doing very well. And he's added, so that was one example. Another very good example was this shop in Dubai who only have one item. They sell masale wali chai, but they sell, and it's for 1 dirham a cup, and they sell 2,000 cups a day. Wow. So that's the kind of business I want to be in. So what you're saying is it doesn't have to be very complicated products. It could be single item, but something for which there is a gap and an unmet need. All right, look, before I pass on to Uzera for some more questions, I have something from the audience. It's from a gentleman who's a social entrepreneur called Adil, who runs a charitable organization here. He's a social entrepreneur. And his question is, Salman, how do you manage your time so that you balance your work life with your family life?
That's a very good question because that is one of the biggest challenge if you start your business and you have a family. You know, I was lucky enough that I started as a bachelor, and even when got married, had a little beautiful angel daughter, and I was going through bankruptcy, so it was very difficult to balance. So the key is that actually, uh, just one related to that is people usually ask a question: Do I need a college degree or not? Also, so one of the things I always talk about it, I always say that you should get a college degree. I recommend it highly because that's answering your question. By the way, I said that college doesn't do anything. If it doesn't do anything, at least it will help you to balance your life. It will help you to budget your time and your commitments and deadlines. So 4 years, they grind you to that. So when you start a business, that means that's what the challenge is, that you have to balance it. So you got to put a priority of your family, of course. But when you, I mean, so you have to dedicate certain time for that. But otherwise, you just have to do whatever it takes, put your time into to make it successful, because when you sacrifice the time, and your family also sacrifice, obviously they go together. So when I was going to bankruptcy, it was not just me, actually it was my wife also. She was going through it, in the sense that for 3 months we didn't have any income. Judge was not giving us any money, so for 3 months we lived off of credit card, and we bought grocery on credit card for 3 months, and we only paid the minimum balance. So that means my wife was actually was going through it as much I was. So you have to give some time to that. But at the same time, the other time that you do have, you just have you have no choice but to dedicate your time to your business so you can make it successful. So when you do that for a few years, of course, then the rewards are there that you'll be able to spend more time with your family. And on average, I said, they say it takes 20 years. On average, it takes 20 years to be financially independent. When I say financially independent, everybody has a different definition of financial independence, and that's what I believe every businessman, every person in life wants to get into that. My definition is that I was in Sri Lanka. I remember I was only 19 years old, and somebody asked me, "What do you want in your life?" And I said that word, financial independence. So, what does that mean? I didn't know a whole lot, but all I said was, "Look, I want to the point where when my wife goes to do grocery shopping, when she needs something, she just go buy it. She doesn't look at the price. That doesn't mean she wastes money. It just means she doesn't have to worry about it. That does she need to save 20 cents and drive for 2 kilometers to buy this thing, or just go pick it up? That's me, is financial independence. Thank you, Asad.
I think you have a very nice wife, because Tony Robbins says that his wife's definition of financial independence is that he owns his own island. Okay.
And my wife owns her own house, and I live in it.
Okay. So, Uzera, do you want to take on the next couple of questions?
Okay, thank you, Asad, and thank you, Salman. Very interesting discussion going on. And Salman, you have talked about idea and business idea, but I have also gone through very interesting discourse where we, with my students at university, that what is more important? Is the idea more important, or the capital is more important? What do we need to have in hand first? Maybe 60, 70 years ago or 100 years ago, yes, probably capital was more important. But now in the current times, what do you think that what is more important, idea or capital?
Thank you, Zara. And I think there's some people say egg and chicken situation. But in my opinion, idea is more important because that is a catalyst of the business. But at the same time, even though I said that, at the same time, ideas are dime in a dozen. You know, matter of fact, all you do is look it up on the Google, and you mention an industry, to give you 10,000 ideas how to do that business. So it is important, but it is the execution is more important after you have the idea. But at the same time, it depends on the business also. And that you have that idea, and you have a lot of money also. But If the ideas is not good, if the time is not right, then you can burn the money, like no end to it. And one of the example is, mostly people don't know about it. Everybody thinks that Jeff Bezos, Amazon is the richest man in the world. Value is more than $200 billion, or maybe half now because he got divorced. But the fact is that before Amazon, he started an auction site called Z-Shop. And he had put a lot of money, his own money in it, went bankrupt. I mean, he closed it. Another example, I mean, Steve Jobs is my idol in business, and I'm very fortunate enough that I met him also in one of the computer show, and I shook hand with him and saying, look, by the way, when I shook hand, I said, hi, Steve, how are you? And he just looked at me, and he was 1 year older than me, so pretty much same age. He said, okay, who are you? So I said, well, Steve, I'm Salman Farooq. So he said, okay, enjoy the show. So I'm very, fortunate enough to have met him. There's example for he failed many times, and we'll know that probably. But one of the prime one is that when he left Apple, Uzera, he bought Pixar from Lucas. That he was getting divorced, by the way. He needed money, so he bought it for $10 million. And he tried, and we all know Pixar, Disney bought it. It's so successful, and Steve Jobs became one of the biggest stockholder of Disney when he sold it to. And Pixar was the first animation company who started a movie animation. He put so much money into it, but it was not taking off. He was trying so hard to sell that thing just for $10 million, and nobody would buy it. And then he sold that to Disney when he became successful for $6 billion. But in Pakistan, there are quite a few examples. One of them is a Wheels, which is a delivery company, have not done well. So it depends on it, but I still say it's idea more important, but execution is even more important. Uzera?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Salman. Asad Saab, would you like to ask some questions now?
Oh, please go ahead with the next question yourself.
Okay, all right. So Salman, what do you think when somebody thinks of starting something of his or her own? So what type of business or sectors do you think are feasible right now in the current times or in the times to come? That in which sectors should somebody be focusing on to start a business so there is some chance of success?
This is a very good question. That's again, that's a $1 million question. But to me, again, based on the answers that I gave, some questions we had, it depends. For example, right now we are into, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are into real estate, art, construction, to ocean farming, to e-commerce, to education, so you name it. That we are. But at this time, if you have to pinpoint it, if you have to pinpoint one sector, to me is the e-commerce because of the COVID, and we have seen it that now a country like Pakistan, women are so savvy now that not only they are selling all kind of things. My children, my boys, every day they come and say, like, one of our friends started this business. He started perfume online. Another one said, some of my lady friends, they started making apple pies, and doing it. So e-commerce is right now will be the top of the list because of the time. And IT has always been my favorite. I got into IT when Apple was the thing for personal computers. Even at that time, I'm talking about 30 years ago. Uzera, at that time, I remember saying IT is the thing. It is the tip of the iceberg. Now I can say the same thing again. It is still tip of the iceberg, IT. And then since we are also into it, as we all know, that we have to meet those global demands for energy saving and alternative energy. That is also it has a huge potential, especially the solar one. Pakistan being we are very fortunate. We are at such an angle to the sun that my partners are Sri Lankan. They made a solar company in Pakistan, and I'm their partner in Pakistan. They said exact same system that they installed on my house 4 years ago, compared to Sri Lanka. They said our output is close to 20 to 25% more because of the angle that our country is. And we have vast, desert also where you can do that. And then the last but not least is virtual technology and blockchain. But on a smaller scale, Uzera, if you have to say that, healthcare is a big thing, because healthcare always will be the thing. And then the food. I mean, even the COVID, when the restaurants were closed, yes, they suffered a lot, but the fact is people still had to eat. So food is there. And then you don't have to have a big, a lot of capital. You don't have to have a big facility. I mean, we all know, we have plenty of examples, even a small stall of kulfi wala. He's doing extremely well, because if you have a unique product and you work hard and you don't cheat, you don't mix anything, that kulfi, which is sell for 20 rupees, you can sell for 100. Example is in China Super, there's a kulfi wala. Sometimes you have to wait for half an hour to get kulfi from him. And so I think right now he sells for 75 or 100 rupees. And then we all know Bengali samosa wala. I mean, he has lines of people eating. So these are some of the things. Zara, I hope I answer your question. I can go on and on.
Yes, thank you, Salman. And
Yeah.
a very interesting discussion. And moving on, I guess we have talked about the idea, capital, and the sectors. But then looking at the entrepreneurship ecosystem as a whole, another relevant question comes to a beginner's mind, that what is the enabling environment in front of him or her. So if we look at some of the figures recently, that Pakistan, if I talk about Pakistan specifically, so we all know that Pakistan, in terms of Pakistan's ranking in that ease of doing business index, is improved. And then there are a lot of opportunities available at government level, like Kamyab Jawan program, or youth entrepreneurship scheme, or Hunarmand Pakistan, skills for all. So that means that the environment is somehow positive and enabling when it comes to starting something of your own. But what, in your opinion, are some of the government's incentives to encourage and promote startups?
Zara, this is a fundamental question. Actually, it's one of the most important questions for the business community, but people, especially people who come from overseas, expatriates. This is the thing. And because we went through that cycle, and I remember last time we discussed that, Asad said I can talk 1 hour on that. So I will not talk 1 hour. I'll try to make it into short answer. This first up one is that they have to protect the investors, especially the expatriates who come here and put their hard-earned money. I mean, even though unfortunately some people think the money grows on the tree overseas, and that is not the case. You still have to work as hard or even more, maybe, especially to prove yourself, prove the others that yes, you can do it in those countries. So you have, the country has to protect the expatriates, and we are prime example. We got cheated and robbed by so many people when we came to Pakistan. But there's nothing you can do about it. There's literally, I mean, you don't want to get into the legal battle. They'll take, my grandchildren will be fighting it. So either you can fight those battles or concentrate on your building the business. So the investors needs to be protected, especially the one who come from overseas, and that is still not there, And I remember Dr. Taurman, I was in the board, I was advisory board of IT committee of Dr. Atta. And he asked me to give a presentation. I gave that presentation on that. And then part of that is copyright and patent, because if you have something unique, that needs to be protected. I mean, for example, even if you just have a laddu and your laddu shop is so successful, and next door somebody open up will say, oh, new laddu. Other one will come out say, oh, new and improved laddu. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Those people who cheat are unfortunately those things. And then going forward, Zara, I don't want to get stuck on that because I can go on that for a long time. Is that, yes, you're right. There needs to be helping small businesses when Islamic financing and grants. And thank God we do have PPAF, and Akhawat is one of my favorite. That no condition asked, they give small loan to people. And they just ask them to give 1 rupee at the end of the day. If they make 10, they give them 1 rupee. And that's also voluntary. And they need to have a tax holidays. As you mentioned, yes, we have improved. Our ranking, ease of doing business in the world have improved. I think we were 138 in 2018, and now we're 108. So yes, improved a lot, but still to look at it, Uzera, we are 108. That means there are 107 countries that you can do business much easier. You have be more protected. And also, Uzera, last but not least, there is no country in the world can prosper if there is no justice. If the justice is not there, there's no country in the world will be able to prosper. And that is the full stop. Thank you very much, Uzera.
Thank you, Salman. Thank you. I think very pertinent points here. And for a beginner, again, everything is set, idea is perfect, and he or she has started to move on with the entrepreneurship on an entrepreneurship journey. So another, obviously, you also mentioned in some of the questions earlier that a business needs to raise funds as well. So what do you think that a person might be looking at, that will he or she get a loan from his or her own family, or will banks offer them a loan to start a business? What are different options that you think are appropriate to
Yes,
raise?
yes, Uzera, thank you. Yes, that is a fundamental and ingredient of a business. As we mentioned, most of the time, even though sometimes you don't need a lot of money, but most of the time, yes, that is the case. And the best is to have your own money. That is the best way to is that you invest your own money. And proof of the point is that when I started my business, for as I mentioned, 2 years, I saved enough to start my business, but that still was not enough. But then if you recall, I have talked about trust, that you need to build the trust with the society, with your friend. So if you have obviously your friends and family are the first you can go after yourself to get some money and to get their loan or have them to invest. So if you have a credit, your family and friends know you more than anybody. So if you are trustworthy, you have the credibility with them, then they know that they can count on you and they can trust you. Everybody wants to, quite frankly, people are looking for opportunities so they can make a little extra money. In my case, as I mentioned, even though I had my money, but I didn't have enough, but I had worked for 2.5 years while I was in university, in the school. I worked for a company as a draftsman because of my architecture background. So he has seen me, he has seen my work ethics for 2.5, 3 years while I worked for him. He was a local American guy. It was a surveying company. He has seen how I work, what my dedication was. Matter of fact, they'll give me odd hours just so I can make enough money. So I went to him and he asked me only one question. He says, Salman, the proposal you gave me, how about if you doubled your expenses and half your income, would you be able to survive? Quite frankly, I had no clue. But lucky enough, I said, yes, 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 because I was so desperate. So he gave me at that time, not only the money he gave me $2 million credit line with the bank to finance the inventory, just because he knew my work ethic. So the best thing is to do is your own, and then friends and family. And after that, obviously, once you get some credibility and have some business, success, then you can go to the banks and investment. But just remember, I'm an investment company. Just remember that I learned hard way, because whenever I desperately needed the money, I could not get it. So the bank only loan you the money when you don't need the money. That is number one with the bank. I'm going to repeat, bank only loan you the money when you don't need it. So you got to have all those things together before you do that. Thank you, Zara. I hope I.
Right. Thank you, Salman. And that's why probably friends and family are become our angel financiers, right? And okay. Okay, Asad, would you like to ask some questions
Yeah,
now?
I'll do that. In fact, I was hoping to take questions from the audience right at the end, but just to keep the conversation going, there are some interesting questions from the audience. Perhaps I can take one of them now. You also have to keep an eye on the time because we're going to finish at about 4:20, 4:30-ish. So a very interesting question, something that I've asked myself occasionally. It's from somebody called Kiran Peter. Hi, Kiran, how are you? And the question is, what is the difference between entrepreneurship and business? And it says most of the times people confuse the two terms. So, Salman, let me first ask you, and then maybe we can ask Mohsin to give his views. What is the difference between being an entrepreneur and being a business owner? Is there a difference?
In my opinion, Asad, it's nowadays actually it's a interchange, and I use that all the time. I call it businessman or entrepreneur. I don't differentiate it. But as you mentioned, Mohsen, since Mohsen is a lot more involved in this thing, and he might be able to answer better than what I just did.
All right, Mohsen, what is your view?
His mic is off.
Let me just check.
While we're waiting, I want to welcome Bhabhi Farzana. She's wife of my home name, and your friend also, Salman Ansari. Welcome, Bhabhi.
Yeah.
Mohsin, सवाल ये पूछा जा रहा था कि what is the difference between business and entrepreneurship? What is your take on this?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Well, entrepreneurship is basically they add the value, they disrupt the status quo, whereas the businessmen they maintain the status quo. Entrepreneurs they run after their passion, the businessmen run after the profits. That's the major difference. And there's a third terminology as well, which we generally mix up, and that is startups. If you look at the entrepreneurship, it is basically divided into three categories, which is one is related with particularly technology and IT. The other one is which is related with the services. And third one is related with the common business, basically. So entrepreneurship is a very big terminology. But the businesses is just the business is that you maintain the status quo, and you don't take the risk, because when you look at one of the shopkeeper, he's very well satisfied and he's complacent whatever he is doing. But entrepreneur, he's always uh, on the kick. He's always moving, he's always disrupting, coming up with the new ideas and adding on values, basically. So these are the two major differences. Businessmen do not take risk as they need to take it. Otherwise, entrepreneurship on the other side, they are able to take the risk, basically. That's the major difference.
I think that's a very good definition. So entrepreneurs are not just running a business, they're also dreamers.
Exactly.
They're always thinking about how to break barriers, how to do new things, create new innovations.
That's right.
Wonderful. Okay, one other very interesting question is that when you enter a market, let's say you're an aspiring entrepreneur or you just started a small business and there are lots of competitors in the market. There are lots of players. In fact, in Pakistan, if you think about any kind of business, let's think about food, for example, which is a very popular choice for many new entrepreneurs. They want, especially women, they want to start a business in catering, or maybe they want to start a small coffee shop, or somebody wants to start something with a burger, a new kind of burger. But there are already so many players in the market. So
Right.
what happens if there are so many players in the market? How do you manage this competition? What do you have to do, Salman?
Actually, that's a very good question. And that is obviously also sometimes it could be a stumbling block for some people. But I always say that I said there's always room. And there's always room for new business. And more than how I say that is always come back to my basic belief is the risk. Whatever the risk is written for me, I'll get it. Doesn't matter what happened. And proof of the point is sometimes you will notice that there are two shops identical on a street, and one will be busy and one will be not. At the same time, you still be more practical about it. So you need to have a USP, I mean unique selling point. So you need to find a new space, new idea, new opportunity, new innovation. And another proof of that point is that there's so many restaurants, and we know that there's so many choices, especially Islamabad. When we came a few years back, there were only a few selection, and now there's so many restaurants every street corner. But then you see new one come along all the time, you know. And then I mean the recent one is, it's not too old, couple of years old, and again Beverly Center. And, I mean, because we live close by, so we see the changes all the time. They come, restaurant come and go. Right now I think there are 15 restaurants over there in the same place. And the latest one is Asian Walk. I mean, look how many Chinese restaurants we have now. Had turned out to be, this is the probably the best.
Well, this is the one in Beverly Center, right?
Beverly Center, yes. It is the now the best one and the most popular one. And sometimes you need 3-4 days in advance to make a booking, especially on the weekend. Literally, I mean, the same day you can forget it. And, you know, to get it. And that's again, to me, Asad, is the survival of the fittest. You know, whoever does the best. I'm talking about everything, you know, on the table. You know, and that could be service, the product, and you name it. If you you have the best, you know, survival of the fittest, you'll be getting the business. And in my opinion, also, Asad, it is good to have healthy competition. You know, you really, in my opinion, because I went through that you need to have healthy competition. If you don't, for example, it just happen to be that you are one of the few or you're the only one, and without that, you get arrogant. And I'm the example of that. That when we started our computer store, I said we had like, I mentioned 80,000 people in that little town. There were 6 computer stores. And everybody said to me that you are crazy, there are already 6 stores and you are opening another one. Yeah. Guess what? Within few years, I said, there were only 2 left, me and another one. And I was the only one in an area of, I think, close to 70, 80 kilometers who had Apple and IBM together in the same shop. Guess what happened? I said, I became arrogant, literally did. And I even became rude to some other people. So that's when, you know, I got punished and I went to bankruptcy. So to me, you know, for a businessman, the best characteristics of a businessman to me is humbleness. So if you really want to do great, if you really want people to remember you, is that you need to be humble. Doesn't matter how successful you are, because you are maybe only one step away from a failure. And we have plenty of examples of that. I mean, I don't have to go through that, how many examples we have, the companies who are doing great, like Nokia and Audi and all those companies, and suddenly, you know, lawsuit came and they have $80 billion they have to pay. So stuff like that. So, and for us, the biggest example is our Prophet Sallam, that no human being ever walked on this face of the earth who was greater than him, but there is no other human being who was more humble than him. So if you want to be great, to be remembered, we need to be humble. So thank you.
I think that's a very powerful lesson, which we need to keep reminding ourselves, because even with small amounts of success, we sometimes become arrogant. And we lose sight of the fact that humility helps. In fact, there is a related question to that from the audience. I could just pose that to you before handing over to Uzera again. This is again from Adil, who is a social entrepreneur, and he's asked a very interesting question, in some ways related to what you were just talking about, which says in a country like Pakistan, where people are set up to believe that, to do business and to make a profit, you have to be deceitful. How do you gain people's trust while doing business? Because the customer mindset, is not always one that trusts. How do you do business? What generates trust in business?
This is an excellent question, Asad. Truly is excellent questions, because that's what you need to be successful, that you have to have a trust. As I mentioned before, trust is like a bank balance. You know, the more you put it in, bigger deposit you get, and later on you can get it. To do that, is the fundamental principle for that is that always you have to be honest. I mean, beside all the other things we talked about, you know, that working hard and having a good product, good service, good all those things are there. You have to do that. But it is, to me, is that staying honest with the customer is one of the most important factors to gain trust. Doesn't matter what happened, doesn't matter how much loss you might end up encountering just because you was truthful, but you need to do that. When you say that I'm going to deliver this item, this product or service in 2 days, you better do it. And if you cannot, which happens, it's very natural, Asad, that you cannot do that sometime, then you need to be honest with them. You need to tell them, look, and not after 2 days, you need to tell them before 2 days, look, I promise you, but these are the genuine reason. And you have to be very truthful or very genuine about those reasons to do that. And proof of the point is that, again, again, I mentioned I learned all business ethics in US. I even tell people, I said, I actually became a Muslim over there, even though I was very fortunate, like most of us, that we are born Muslim. And but I literally, I believe that that's where I learned Islam. It was like Allama Iqbal, who said when he went to Germany, I said that Islam is here and Muslims are India. So that's what I found out. So proof of that is that I was so truthful to my clients as far as the delivery and and since we are in a product business, our sometimes product fail, like it's just natural. So if we could not fix it, or we had delayed on it, I was, brutally honest with them for that. And matter of fact, one time I remember a customer commenting to me. He said, "Look, I've been in business. I've been in this job. We did most of our business with U.S. government after like probably 8-10 years out of 20." And he said, I've been in this job 20 some years. You are the first person I met who's so honest about your business. Doesn't matter, you feel like that they're going to cancel the order, but you need to be honest. And for that, I got rewarded. You get rewarded tremendously. And I'll give you an example of that, Asad, if you allow me to, is that since I was doing business with US government, and September 30th was their last day, you know, for the year end. And on that last 2 days, it's like a nightmare because they have to spend the money. Otherwise, they're going to lose their money for next year. And I had that kind of trustworthy relationship that they will give me their own computer. For purchasing department will give me their own computer. They said, you sit on it. Here is the money. You issue a purchase order to yourself. And it doesn't matter what you're ordering, and doesn't matter how much it costs. And I'm telling you that now, I am now being
like
honest.
A blank check.
It was like a blank check. And if they got caught, they would have gone, me and him would have gone to jail for that. Because it was totally unethical. I mean, not unethical, illegal actually for them. But because there's a trust, they were able to do it. And for that reason, I was able, obviously I had to build it up over the year that I would return extra money that I felt like that the prices have gone down, and I literally have returned hundreds thousands of dollars to the clients because I felt like my margins have gone up. That was the trust that I
think that's what you've just said is perhaps the most powerful message of the afternoon, because we need to remember that it's good to be technically bright, to be smart, to be street smart even. But ये जो पाकिस्तान में जो concept है ना चालाकी का, ये चालाकी नहीं होनी चाहिए. We should replace that with honesty and integrity, because that wins dividends in the longer term. So I think that's very powerful, and perhaps something that younger people who are just becoming entrepreneurs or who are dreaming of becoming entrepreneurs, make that a foundation, integrity and honesty in their dealings with other people. Uzera, you want to take over some other questions? We are at 4 p.m. We're about 15-20 minutes away from the end. So a couple of questions from you, Uzera.
Okay, thank you, Asad. And Salman, now talking about some failures. Um, how long, in your opinion, should a person wait before giving up? And how many times you have failed in your journey?
Well, it's a good question. Actually, it's a it depends, quite frankly, and there could be a lot of reasons. One of them, the prime reason, could be that you run out of capital. You know, so and then you have family to support. I mean, that could be one reason. Or in my case, I was forced into bankruptcy by my creditors. I mean, I had no choice but to file for bankruptcy. They filed for bankruptcy for me. I had to do it. No choice. And then other is obviously, Uzera, if your family is being affected, and whatever the reason, you can't feed them, you cannot take care of them, or there is such a tension, going on because the business and the family, and it's affecting your family, that you need to obviously maybe think twice about it to keep going. But at the same time, try not to give up, because the most important thing in business is the longevity and the dedication. And we have plenty of examples that Apple went through that, practically almost went to bankruptcy. Amazon took forever to make money, but Jeff Bezos kept, trying, kept working at it. So, not to give up, that if you can. Again, when we went through bankruptcy, Uzera, in US, 95% people don't come out of bankruptcy, 95%. But we did. We were one of the 5%. And everybody told me to just close the shop and open a shop. US has a beautiful bankruptcy laws that they protect you from creditors, and you just move on and then open another business with a different name and nobody can touch you. But no, that would have been unethical to me. So I paid off all the debt, which the judge asked me to do it. They compromised it, and we came out. So then there's a huge reward for that, because you haven't given up, because the same business, and that's actually gives you more credibility. So, and then also, again, I was very honest with my clients that, look, I'm going to bankruptcy, so I would need money. I would need to get paid quick. So Uzera, imagine with the US government, I mean, in that case, there was a state government and some state hospitals, some of my clients. And I mean, one was a very multi-billion-dollar company called Dow Chemical. Everybody knows they were my client. When I told them the truth, but they knew that I was so honest, and they knew that our product services are great. Sometimes they will pay me in 3 to 4 days. Normally it takes 60 days. And one client, I remember, in the morning I went there, in the afternoon they gave me, I think it was $150,000, that they owed me. They paid me. So that's what the reward you get, but not giving up, but just staying persistent. So as for your question, Uzera, that how many times I failed, that was your question, I believe?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Uzera, actually, last count, it was at least 10 times. At least 10 times I have failed in my life. So that should just tell you how many times. It could be even more, could be less. There's no fixed number. But the key is that you stay at it and continue.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I think it's very important especially for our youngsters, to understand that failure is part and parcel when you are into this journey. And I think a very interesting discussion you started. I guess some tips and technical things that we have discovered. But I guess you have talked about certain very good principles and values of integrity. And if you allow me to open up another question around business ethics. So just to share a small example of my own, that one of the close friends of mine, last year, she wanted to start some business of her own, a coffee shop of food. She was just looking around to have some knowledge around it, to gain some insights around it, that how to start that. So we met some people who were already doing that business, and very interesting things came up. So one of the person who was already running that the similar kind of business, he bluntly asked my friend that do you want to make profit? What do you want? Do you want to make quick profits, or do you want to just follow your passion of opening up a cafe or something? So she was like, okay, what is the difference? Obviously, if I want to start something of my own, so I want profits as well. So he said that fine, there are two lines. Since it's a food business, if you use expired or near to expiry ingredients, you will certainly have more profits and quicker profits. So uh, and the other line is pretty longer. You will start, and if you follow certain principles and you want to have honesty and integrity intact, then obviously it will be a long journey. So coming to the question that looking at the conditions and looking at the mindset we are having, do you think that business can be successfully conducted having all the ethics in place?
Yes, it is actually, it's a very, very important question, particularly in our market in Pakistan, where the environment is very different and difficult for entrepreneurs. It is very easy for to do business in developed countries. You don't even think about it in that sense. I'm talking about ethics or non-ethics. You just do business and it's straightforward. I mean, like, unfortunately, if over there, probably 95% or more people might be ethical and honest, and unfortunately, in this developing country, it might be just the opposite. But yes, in developing countries, it is very much feasible, and it is done like that. That doesn't mean there's no corruption. I mean, like I was, as I mentioned, I was doing business half of my business life over there with the U.S. government, and even there is a corruption, but then that level is so huge, it's unbelievable, but still very small, significant, smaller percentage wise than here. For example, almost 20 years, I never had to bribe any government agencies, even though I spent most of my business life with the government. Only 3 times I was asked for bribe. Only 3 times out of almost 20 years. Over here, you cannot, I mean, here, if you do business with the government, it might be 3 times a day, maybe, unfortunately. And those 3 times, I obviously rejected it, but I still did extremely well. Uzera, just because I didn't bribe them, that doesn't mean that I was not able to do business. So it is almost impossible over here, and it doesn't matter how much I say it, that it's we should do our best not to. But unfortunately, if you have to deal with patwari, because we are in real estate business also, so we know how it is. And if you want to get some approval from government entity, unfortunately, it's pretty much like that. At the same time, Uzera, I must say to young people that you must have the will to do it right. I mean, niyat hoti hai na, the niyat and the intentions. Okay, as we know, everything. I mean, first hadith of Bukhari, which was quoted by Umar Khattab Radhiyallahu anhu, is about niyat. It is about niyat. So if you have that niyat, and then you do your best, even in Pakistan, of course, you can do ethical work and you can build that trust and you can do it, even though it's hard. But yes, you can, Zara.
Okay,
thank you.
Right. Thank you. And do you think that somebody need to register a company or some other government banking formality to start with?
No, not really. Actually, no, not at all. You can start a business as a sole entrepreneur, and then just start the business. You don't need anything. You don't even need to make a corporation even anymore. So if you just have to have will to do it, and
Right.
that's it.
And how feasible is it to start an e-commerce business, for instance? And how much
Actually,
would it cost?
I'm sorry. Actually, yes, it is. As we keep talking about e-commerce, because that is the thing. Plus, I've been in e-commerce business for many years. I really believe that it is. It's not. It depends again. Zara, what kind of product that you want to get into it? If you just a simple website nowadays that, as I mentioned, is only 10,000 rupees. And if you're doing Instagram business or you're doing Facebook, you don't even need that. And proof of the point is our Goshanan, as I mentioned, we really did not need hardly any capital to start it. Our website was done in 10,000, which really did not need it if we didn't want to, but we wanted to have it. And then nowadays, there's so many ladies on Instagram and Facebook. I mean, they're selling jewelry and they're selling food and fashions and cosmetics and all kind of things that now can be done. You just need to, again, it has to have a niche, Uzera. For example, for us in Goshanan, niche is it's a natural products, organic products, you know, and no, you know, messed up in it, you know, that's bad for the health. And anything else, you have to have a niche again. Like my son's friend, he started online business just selling perfume with his own brand. And he said that in 1 month, he got 100 orders. So yes, it can be done nowadays, as long as you have a little niche that you can go for it. Thank you, Uzera.
Right. My last question from my side, that we know that when you start a business of your own, you don't have a boss, you become your own boss. So is it true, or is there any then who is the boss then in our business when we start our own setup?
Again, Uzera, it is to some degree you are the boss. Yes, to some degree, and let me qualify that. When I say you are the boss to some degree, like you have control on your hours, you know, and you have pretty much control on everything, you know. But at the same time, yes, you have a boss, and you have a big boss. That's beside my wife, by the way. Is the boss is your customers. That is your boss. And there is a rule number one for customer. In a matter of fact, there's a big stone in one of the big grocery store in US. There was a big stone. They had written 2 rules on it. The rule number one was customer is always right. And then Uzera, there was a rule number 2. If the customer is wrong, read rule number 1. So you have to stick to that.
True.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Asad Saab.
Okay, thank you, Uzera, for these very, very interesting questions and very apt responses from Salman. You're really doing an excellent job sharing your real life experiences. I want to draw into the conversation Omar Akbar, who's obviously a friend of yours, Salman, and he had written something very interesting in the chat area, that there are 67 behavior characteristics called personal entrepreneurial characteristics. So rather than me talking about that, I've asked Omar to say a few words about this. Go ahead, Omar.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Very privileged and honored to be a part of this collaborative learning experience. Salman, you really, really dazzle me every time I meet you. And absolutely, it was a surprise way how I met him, and he just keeps on adding to that surprise. Kudos to you guys to put the whole concept together, and I really appreciate putting it in. And it's just a coincidence that how like-minded people start flying together, right? Birds with the same kind of feathers, as they say. So this program is an MSI design program. It's a Washington-based company. They conducted a global survey for successful entrepreneurs, and out of which putting a human emotional part into a characteristic is what this is all about. And there were 67 characters which were picked up, which everyone comes up with. Out of which these 10, which I stated in there, just to put it a very cognitive way to look at it, picked is few characters which has to be balanced at all times. You can't just let one reach further, and it again goes situation to situation. And I can go one by one. Opportunity seeking, as Salman Saab has been stating, as the questions have been about, we are all looking for opportunities, right? How we can add value to it. So it's an initiative and opportunity seeking mindset at all times. It doesn't matter what the product is, it doesn't matter. And then comes a personal preference on those products, how you're emotionally attached, what the market is about, is it legal, is it illegal? All those balancing comes into part. Risk taking has been a very, very big concern for when it comes down to new entrepreneur seekers. So for myself, my journey is starting from being an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur. So I have been working with Slumberger, as Salman said. I was working for someone else's money, taking risk, expanding in a global market space for those products. But when it comes down to my money now, it's a very different emotional feel to it. The decisions are very different. um, I am exactly at the same spot where I believed I was before I was taking any risk, right? So now, so risk taking, when we talk about from an entrepreneur side of it, or for particularly on based on this research, was that we try to take minimum risk as an entrepreneur. We can't just gamble. You know, it has to be an educated decision, and definitely you have to take a step forward, but you can't gamble. That's the bigger the risk, the better the reward. That's true, but it has to be an educated decision. So one definition I put it in there was that it has to be profitable. Risk has to be minimized. You just can't gamble. You know, that's how we put it up. It has to be profitable. And profit, again, is defined 1 plus 1, 1 plus whatever you make out of it. Sometimes we call it an investment, but it's going to drain your capital and resource out, or your time. Demand for efficiency and quality. So the faster you can deliver, the quality is what people accept, right? So those definitions have to be balanced up. You try to sell us something very fancy out, but nobody's going to buy a Tesla in the Pakistani market, right? The quality is fantastic, but the people are not ready for it yet. It's efficient at the same time. So the market has to be right. The client needs persistence. Salman Sab said it very rightly earlier, and I'll just continue to complement what you guys come up with, right? You have to keep going. You have to keep going. That's what it is all about. But then the balance, that when you're going to run out of resource, so an educated one decision again has to be made out. It can't be risked out. Commitment to work contract. It's going to be hard as an entrepreneur, what I'm facing right now, you know. So I go back to these traits for myself also. And information is power, right? In the times where we are at, where you can pick up $1 thing and sell it more than $1 is basically what it comes down to being a businessman, right? How you can create an impact while you're doing it. Goal setting, right? So this is very important for me. Coming from a corporate side, this is the key to success for corporates or bigger businesses. When we look at it, there's a target to reach to. Without this, everything is a target, right? Shooting a bullet in any direction and just putting a bullseye mark on it does not mean that you achieve the goal, right? So the direction you want to be. The most chaotic part of anything is definitely planning. The most, because options are available, there's so much you can do. This is the choice part. And how do you go back and recorrect or realign yourself? It's just like flying a plane or riding a bike. You know, you're going to drift away, but you try to.
Yeah.
So last part, second last, is persuasion and networking. Very important. You have to keep going back to your clients. Your area of influence has to know you. You have to be relevant enough. Networking, how to connect to people, of course. Interdependence and self-confidence. You can't win by yourself. That's what I learned. It has to be, you know, an effort together.
Omar, very valuable insights. Thank you for that contribution. We look forward to having you collaborate with us on an ongoing basis. मोहसिन, मैं आपसे अगर पूछ सकूं कि ये वो जो हम सिखाते थे अपने entrepreneurial students को कि behavioral traits क्या कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स होते हैं, वैसे तो बहुत से होते हैं और वो जिस तरह उमर ने कहा है कि वो पूरा स्पेक्ट्रम है, लेकिन आपकी नज़र में, in your opinion, what are the most, maybe the two most important traits that successful entrepreneurs tend to have?
Thanks, Asad. सबसे पहले तो ये है कि पैशन होना चाहिए. पैशन डिफाइंस एवरीथिंग. और पैशन मैट्रिक्स एक टेक्निक है जो पैशन मैं निकलवाता हूँ लोगों से, क्योंकि अगर आप पैशनेट नहीं हैं तो यू विल कीप हॉपिंग ओवर द होल्स बेसिकली. तो उसमें फिर क्या होता है कि व्हेन यू आर पैशनेट यू अचीव एवरीथिंग. देन तो ये सबसे पहले क्वालिटी ये होनी चाहिए कि व्हाट यू आर पैशनेट अबाउट. हम यही गलती करते हैं. हम जब पढ़ाते हैं या जब हम पता करते हैं लोगों से कि what do you want? Why are you doing this business? उनका जवाब ये होता है कि I'm doing it for profit, which is totally wrong. Profit या money is a byproduct. It will come automatically. लेकिन अगर आप पहले से आप पैशनेट उसके बारे में हैं तो people do not like you what you do. People like you why you do it basically. And this is so important. And this is where आपने देखा होगा जो भी लोग पैशनेट है, आप जिनकी भी अभी सलमान ने बातें की हैं, कर्नल सैंडर्स की या उसकी स्टीव जॉब्स की, अमेजोन की, दे आर ऑल पैशनेट अबाउट देयर हाउ बेजोस जो है वो कैसे कन्वर्ट हुआ. उसने एक न्यूज़ पढ़ी थी अखबार के अंदर कि इंटरनेट इज गोइंग टू चेंज द होल इकोनॉमी बेसिकली. ही गॉट पैशनेट अबाउट इट. अदरवाइज ही वाज वर्किंग एट ए मैकडॉनल्ड्स, वो तो बर्गर्स को फ्लिप करता था बेसिकली. पैशनेट होना सबसे पहली शर्त है बेसिकली. इफ यू आर नॉट पैशनेट अबाउट इट, डोंट डू इट. दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. अक्सर लोग क्या करते हैं कि मैं जब वो गोल्डन सर्कल हम करवाते हैं उसमें आपने देखा होगा लोग कॉपी कैट कर रहे होते हैं. अच्छा वो उसने किया तो मैं भी कर लूँ. आप यूनिक हैं, आप काइंडली अपनी स्ट्रेंथ्स को निकालें, उसको फिर आप मैपिंग करें. सबसे पहले तो ये है. दूसरी चीज़ जो आपके अंदर होनी चाहिए और उसको रिसर्च आज उसको सब्सटेंशिएट करती है. Daniel Goleman is the person, he said, your success comes from being emotionally intelligent, and 80% it plays its part. Your technical knowledge is only 20%, or maximum 33%. Rest 66% is being emotionally intelligent. And अभी जो ये जो है सलमान ने बताया है, ह्यूमिलिटी इज ऑन द टॉप. अगर आप गुड टू ग्रेट बुक पढ़ें जिम कॉलिंस की, तो उसमें वो 5 लेवल्स ऑफ लीडरशिप डिफाइन
लेवल 5 लीडरशिप, बिल्कुल
एग्जैक्टली. उसकी जो टॉप की जो वो बताता है कि द टॉप लेवल 5 लीडरशिप इज बीइंग being more intentional, and secondly being humble. And these are the two most difficult qualities to achieve, क्योंकि ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है. और उसमें आपने देखा होगा जो भी जिनके डाउनफॉल शुरू हुए हैं, ये नोकिया जिनकी भी बातें हो रही हैं, ये सब या तो वो कंप्लेसेंसी में मारेंगे या एरोगेंस में मारेंगे. इट्स नॉट ओनली एरोगेंस, इट्स द अदर डिजीज विच वी हैव इज कंप्लेसेंसी. हम बिल्कुल सेटिस्फाइड हो जाते हैं कि यार ठीक है, अब ये काफ़ी है, ये चल रहा है. तो उससे भी डाउन. नोकिया का कैसे डाउनफॉल हुआ कि उन्होंने कहा हम तो बस ये इजाद कर लिया है, उसके बाद आप देखें कि वो सफ़ा हस्ती से मिल रही. ब्लैकबेरी इज अनदर एग्जाम्पल, और बहुत सारी मैं आपको मिसालें दे सकता हूँ. तो ये दो चीज़ें जो हैं ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, पर्पस एंड बीइंग इमोशनली इंटेलिजेंट. एंड देन व्हेन यू आर पैशनेट यू कैन मूव द माउंटेन्स. मैं आपको ऐसी ऐसी स्टोरीज सुना सकता हूँ जिनके पास कुछ भी नहीं था और उन्होंने बिजनेसेस करके दिखाया एंड दे हैव एक्सेल्ड लाइक एनीथिंग. क्योंकि ये पैशन होना इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, और उसके लिए आपका एक पैशन मैट्रिक्स आप निकलवाएं. असल हमारे प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है कि वी आर मिसअलाइंड. हम कर कुछ और करना चाहते हैं, लेकिन बाहर जब देखते हैं कि वो क्या कर रहा है उस तरह से कॉपी उसको करना चाहते हैं. अब हमें ये नहीं मालूम होता है कि उस बंदे ने इस पे 20 साल लगाए हैं. आप कहीं से पहले शुरू करो. और आपने अभी जो बातें की कि ये जो हम बिजनेस जो है जब शुरू करते हैं कंपटीशन में, तो आपकी एक यूनिक सेलिंग होनी चाहिए. आप केसी वालों को देख लें, इन्होंने कहाँ से शुरू किया था. ही स्टार्टेड मेकिंग चीज केक, और वो फ्रेंड्स जाते थे घर में और वो कहते थे भाभी हमारे लिए बना के आप भेजें, हम आपको पे करेंगे. वहाँ से किचन कुजीन जो है फिर एक्सपेंड हुआ है. इसी तरह से और बहुत सी हैं. तो एक आपकी यूनिक स्ट्रेंथ होनी चाहिए जो कि आप उसके ऊपर स्टिक करें. और आई एम ए प्रोपोनेंट ऑफ स्ट्रेंथ. गोहर, आप अपनी स्ट्रेंथ के ऊपर जाएं, डोंट कॉपी एनीवन. आप यूनिक हैं, आप उसी को फाइंड आउट करें. आई थिंक दीज आर द टू थिंग्स जो यू नीड टू फॉलो, पैशन एंड बीइंग इमोशनली इंटेलिजेंट.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. अच्छा मोहसिन, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर दैट रिस्पॉन्स. हमारे पास एक और सीरियल एंटरप्रेन्योर हैं जो इस वक्त यूके में मौजूद हैं. उनका नाम है अशरफ नूर. सो अशरफ, asking you the same questions basically for a successful entrepreneur. What in your opinion are the characteristics that define somebody who's going to be successful?
First of all, thank you so much for, after a long time, being involved into this event. I spent quite good quality of time with Brother Salman, and Alhamdulillah, I was blessed that I've learned so many things from Brother Salman. He's also one of my mentor.
Thank
Okay.
you very but when I grow up, I want to be just like you.
One thing, during my experience in Pakistan, me and myself and brother Salman, we try to help youngsters to basically, to execute their ideas and try in different levels. One thing I found it in Pakistan, especially in the UK as well, when the youngsters come, they said, okay, what about if we have idea, or if we don't have any idea, how we can set up a business? So I said to them, look, you need to understand the concept of the big universe. If everybody want to be starting a business, how this universe system is going to work. So even if you don't have any idea, or if somebody has idea, so you have to take initiative and help that person to execute this idea. So this is one element which I found it that most of the youngsters, they are confused. They're thinking, okay, we're going to be setting up a business, and if you don't have any idea, so and once they have any idea, then I would recommend that they should be find a coach and mentor, because she's very, very important. Because I've seen that most of people, they have idea and they leave this idea for whole life. But if they find somebody else who can execute their idea, and they should take initiative to pursue that person. And coaching and mentor is very, very important. And I've seen, alhamdulillah, Brother Mohsin and you guys are providing this is the platform, which is a very, very important. Being in entrepreneurship, for myself, that's what I do basically personally. Every time when I see the gap in the market, or if I see any idea, I try to execute by myself. If I see that somebody else can execute better than me, then basically I pursued that person to execute that idea. So that's the approach basically I have it. But the rest of the ethics, which is Brother Salman mentioned and Mohsin Bhai mentioned, absolutely fine. And I agree with that. And I also follow with this one. And I always recommend all the youngsters, and especially Brother Umar has mentioned very useful points. So I think if the youngsters follow these useful information, I'm pretty sure they should be able to succeed that entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ashraf. That was useful advice. Salman, true to the spirit of entrepreneurship, which is about discipline and making sure we stick to our time schedules, we have about 2 minutes left for this webinar. First of all, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank Ashraf, Uzera, Mohsin Lodi, Omar Akbar, and everybody else, Dr. Shelva, all our guests and participants for honoring us, with your presence during this time. We are going to put a recording of this on YouTube, and we'll make sure everyone gets a link to that. But for the moment, I'd just like to request you, Salman, to give us some final advice for somebody thinking about starting a business, or somebody struggling with a business. They are having some difficulty, or somebody who is double-minded about whether to start a business or not. Any final words that you would like to give?
Asad, thank you very much. And thanks everybody for participating, and all the participants from across the world. Actually, they came and joined us for this great, endeavor that we all want to do it. It's just in closing, in a nutshell, if I have to say that, I said that we need to follow, when it comes to business or in life, we must follow our Prophet ﷺ's life. that it's just like a business that he struggled all his life for a message that there was a truth, and he did not want anything in return. So if you have that intention that I am here to give, and this business is part of that giving, that whatever God have blessed you, whatever, it's a talent or the money or product or service. If you have that intentions that I want to make a difference and I want to follow the footsteps of Prophet Sallam, and then what doesn't matter what happened, you still will be successful. Even if you fail, you're still successful, because that means that you just learn one more lesson to go to the next level and to the next level. And that's our job. We must do that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Salman. Thank you, everyone. Wishing you all the best from MDI, and hope to see you, inshallah, in the very near future again with some new topics, and hopefully inviting Salman again to share his wisdom. Thank you, Salman. Thank you, everyone. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.